All right, I'm back. Today, I want to go over when narcissists get into a relationship together. And people don't talk about this much because they would rather have things be completely black and white, a 100% abuser and a 100% victim. And don't get me wrong, that is the case a lot of the time. And if you're in a vulnerable place right now, you're just getting out of a toxic relationship or a relationship with a narcissist or some other abuser, this stream might not be the best for you because I'm going to be going over advanced stage topics here. I'm going to go over things that require a little more nuance and it's not going to be as cut and dry. But with that being said, if you want to listen, here I am. Because I want people who follow me, I want them to be equipped with the ability to have the nuance, to see the shades of gray, and to not fall apart the second that things don't fall neatly into a black or white box. And a lot of people, that's what happens to them. The second it doesn't go exactly how they think it should go, black or white, they crumble. And just like Raquel, the capacity expert, said, we want to build people's capacity here. You want to be able to hear these perspectives and build up your perception of reality and your trust in yourself and your gut to the point that it doesn't impact you. But this is something that can happen here that I'm about to say. And let's start with the background. Well, narcissism is on a spectrum. That means there are severe narcissists and less severe narcissists. And Dr. Salerno and I, we went over this in our last interview, and I had asked him, can someone be on the spectrum of narcissism, but not be a full-blown narcissist with NPD? He said yes. And I said, yeah, that's what I would think. So I consider narcissism to be a spectrum. NPD is someone that has 5 of the 9 traits of narcissism, and you have to be diagnosed by a licensed professional. But I think, honestly, the spectrum of narcissism is really more accurate. So that's number one. You got to have that backdrop. The other backdrop is not all narcissists are exactly the same. And yes, many of them do indeed say very similar things. They say and do a lot of the same things a lot of times, but it will not be exact because how a covert narcissist will act in the beginning is going to be different than how a grandiose narcissist often reacts and how they handle things. So there's going to be differences. A cerebral narcissist is going to be different than a somatic narcissist. A religious narcissist is going to be different than, say, a spiritual narcissist. Now, granted, a lot of the behaviors will certainly overlap. A lot of the traits are going to overlap. They have the same core traits, but how they present, that is what can look different. And a covert narcissist, what is that? Covert narcissist is simply someone whose traits of narcissism are covert, meaning they are more difficult to detect, but they have the same grandiosity and feelings of superiority, the exploitation in their relationships, the impaired empathy, the hypersensitivity to criticism and perceived criticism, the entitlement, the fantasies of power, money, success, brilliance, or the ideal love. Covert narcissists have all those same traits. But this is for the backdrop. And occasionally, what can happen is 2 narcissists, generally speaking, a more severe narcissist and a less severe narcissist, they can meet one another and they might really hit it off at first. But eventually, there's going to be some sort of power struggle. They're not instantly going to narc off, so to speak. It's not going to be instant. But as time goes on, any relationship that develops, there's going to be a bit of a power struggle. And one narcissist can out narc the other one. And people want to think, well, that never happens. A narcissist just wants this. The narcissist just wants that. Well, I think it absolutely happens. And I think there are even some creators here in this space who I think were probably out-narked by their partner. And that's why they're here. And it gives them now, they still do the things, like even a less severe narcissist, they can enjoy playing the victim. They can enjoy doing things for attention, admiration, and acknowledgement, being the savior. And especially when a narcissist gets out-narked, they will love being a content creator because it hits those buttons for them. Oh, I get some attention and admiration. I get to be seen as the authority figure. I get to be seen as superior, and I can even be the victim. So all those boxes can check for them. But the reason I even came up with this idea today was because I had made a post on Instagram about how it's not always cut and dry, a 100% abuser and 100% victim. That's just not always how it is. I'd say there's maybe 10 to 20% of the time there can be two toxic people. And then this got me into the next debate, which is what is abuse? And there are some people who believe the only definition of abuse is when there's only a power imbalance and within a process or pattern of coercive control, where another person who is being victimized, they can do all sorts of things. They can even harm the person, but they're not going to consider that abuse because of the power imbalance. And I get what they're saying with that. And I've asked the same person, okay, with that definition, do you think women can abuse men? And I know there are some people, such as Lundy Bancroft, the author of Inside the Mind of Angry and Controlling Men, he doesn't believe women can abuse men because he thinks that men have more power always. But what I would say to Lundy is I would push back on that because there's many versions of power. Physical power is just one version of power, but there's also the power of how much confidence do you have? What is your belief in yourself? Attractiveness and physical beauty can be a version of power. Your money and status is a version of power. All of these things can contribute. I don't think it's just one thing. I think there's many things that can contribute to someone's power level. But Lundy Bancroft says no, it's just men cannot be abused by women because women never have more power than them. I wouldn't agree with that. I wouldn't agree with that. I've seen things where there are women who treat men terribly and they're doing the whole process of coercive control. They have torn down the man. The man is a shadow of himself. He's belittled by her, criticized by her, and I think he's being abused by her. So that's how I would see that. But there are some people who wouldn't see it that way. But my point is, when I listen to some people in coaching sessions, there are some people I'm listening to them and I'm like, you know what? Both of these people, they sound toxic. And they might not be a full-blown narcissist, but you can sense things. And this is not quite the same also as CPTSD and narcissistic fleas. Narcissistic fleas are what happens when you are around someone a lot who is a narcissist, you start picking up some of their behaviors. That's different. I think narcissistic fleas is really a symptom of CPTSD. But when someone truly is on the spectrum of narcissism, that is not CPTSD and that is not narcissistic fleas. But they can both be that way before the relationship. And you could also make an argument sometimes that a person on the spectrum of narcissism, they can also have CPTSD. Maybe they had a narcissistic parent. But unlike what some people would say narcissism is just a trauma response. I don't think it's just a trauma response. I think that there are times when narcissists can have CPTSD as well. But I think that genetic component is pretty important to the whole thing. Dr. Salerno and I have gone over that a lot. But the point of this here is there can be two toxic people coming in, and it's not going to be as cut and dry as, full-blown narcissist and full-blown abuser, and then 100% the victim. Life isn't always that black and white. Now, that being said, there are times when I listen to stories, and it is that cut and dry. And the only things that the victim's doing is they can react to the other person's abuse in a reactive abuse setting. And what's reactive abuse? Reactive abuse is really just a reaction to abuse. I don't consider that the same thing at all. That's more of a cut and dry scenario. That's what I would say to that. The scenarios I'm talking about are when two narcissists on the spectrum of narcissism, they come in and then they're going to have a dominance fight. They're both going to be trying to get control of the other. But the narcissist who wins, the narcissist that believes the most in their own perception of reality, the narcissist that has the strongest frame, they're the one that wins. And then slowly but surely, the other narcissist will unsubscribe from their reality, and then they'll start subscribing to the other narcissist's reality. And some people would think, well, that's not possible. But no, but it is possible. Just like the same way that a borderline can be abused, and they can also be abusive sometimes, for the same reason that's possible, the two narcissists can get into a relationship together. That's possible as well. And again, I totally get it. For most people, this is not the story. This is not your story. But the tricky part would be even a narcissist lower end on the spectrum, they probably wouldn't admit this anyway. That's the other thing. That's what makes it tricky. There's a lot of people who consider themselves to be victims that even if they weren't, they would never admit it. They're not going to admit it because as someone who's on the spectrum of narcissism, they enjoy playing the victim. They're not going to give that up. Another thing that happens when a narcissist is with a borderline. Now, a lot of it would also be determined by what type of borderline is it. And as Dr. Salerno and I go over consistently, 60% of people with one cluster B personality disorder can also qualify for another. So someone might have borderline, but there's also then a 60% chance they're also a narcissist, or they also have histrionic, or they also have antisocial. That happens. People don't like to think of that happening, but it can absolutely happen. But again, this kind of conversation, at the end of the day, for someone who's truly been victimized, this doesn't matter for you. What matters for you is healing the trauma bond. What matters for you is working on the symptoms of CPTSD if you have it. What matters for you is getting EMDR or some other kind of trauma therapy. What matters for you is going no contact and staying no contact, avoiding the Hoover attempts, learning everything you can about narcissism and their behaviors. And here's the other thing. People don't hear this much either. But there are people who reach out to me that say, you know what, Jared? It sounds like you're talking about me when you're talking about those toxic behaviors. People would think that doesn't happen, but it does happen. And I would say people that are lower end narcissists, lower end of the spectrum of narcissism, they are more likely to be able to do that. A severe narcissist, probably not. A severe narcissist, they're never going to admit it. It's always someone else's fault. They're going to blame everyone else except for themselves, and they're not going to take accountability. But a less severe narcissist, they can recognize sometimes, yeah, I'm doing some of these behaviors. And it's not even in the context of they're being accused of it by their romantic partner, because that does happen too, of course. Of course, sometimes what I see is someone is being accused they're a narcissist by their partner, and then they start to believe it. And then they reach out to me, oh, I think I'm a narcissist. I'm like, oh, why do you think that? Oh, my partner tells me I am. I'm like, oh, is that so? What do they tell you? And I say to them, tell me the context in which they call you a narcissist. And a lot of times what they'll say is, oh, I was trying to tell them no, or I wanted to place a boundary, or I enforced a boundary with them, or I told them I didn't like something they did. And then they called me a narcissist. And I said, you know what? That's not what makes you a narcissist. That doesn't make you a narcissist. It sounds like your partner is projecting what they are onto you. That's a different story. So in this case, the narcissist accusations are absolutely confessions, and they're accusing their partner of, you must be a narcissist because you have a boundary, and your boundary is getting in the way of me controlling you. And as Marcella from Beyond the Bruise said the other day, a boundary is a betrayal to a narcissist because your boundary means it's harder to control you. So a narcissist can see that as a betrayal. But in that case, this is more of a cut and dry case. Now, you are being victimized and abused by your partner that just wants to control you. And anything that gets in the way of their control of you, they're not going to like. And they're going to grill you with all these things. They're just not going to like it. But sometimes there are people that are not in that case. And they say, you know what? I do some of these things. And I do try to help those people too. And what I would say to someone in that spot, I would ask them to write down or to really reflect on When do they think those behaviors come out the most? So maybe they think they lash out when they're criticized. And that's something that somebody that is just emotionally immature can do too, by the way. That can happen. But someone that is truly narcissistic and they do that, I would say, okay, you get criticized. Then what? And then maybe they just want to do the first thing that comes to their mind. And the first thing that comes to their mind is they want to lash out, enrage, and diminish the person that criticized them. That's a very common thing for narcissists to want to do. And what I would tell the person in this situation is, okay, if you can, have the awareness to take a step back to try to respond rather than react. Because if you get that negative jolt and then you feel that negative feeling, and then you just want to lash out the second you get that feeling and try to belittle and diminish the person that gave you that feeling. Now, that's unconscious behavior. That's what Eckhart Tolle would call the pain body. They've touched on that pain body, and now you just want to lash out. But if you can find a way to take a step back, and if you feel that feeling and you feel unregulated, don't say the first thing that comes to your mind. And in that case, taking a break from that conversation can be great, because if your emotions are very volatile and they're going up and down, left and right, you don't need to say something right away. You can say, okay, I'm going to take a step back here. And this is why they say behavior modification is possible. And there's other tricks to it too. You can say, you can breathe 3 deep breaths and then try not to act in anger when you get that feeling. But a lot of it's just having that awareness. And what contributes to this too? I think everything in our lives contributes to this: our mind, body, and spirit, how mentally healthy we are, how spiritually healthy we are, our sleep, diet, and exercise routine. If we're super stressed, super high in cortisol, yeah, and if you're a narcissistic person on the spectrum of narcissism, it is much more likely you're just going to fly off the handle. But if you're well rested, you're not abusing drugs and alcohol in any way, you've got a good sleep, diet, exercise routine, it's going to be a little easier to be emotionally regulated. Now, not always. And like we all know, not all narcissists even have the awareness to even begin this process, right? But I'm proud of the people that are able to admit it. I'm proud of the people that they can admit that, oh, I do some of these behaviors. And I love hearing that. And that's why I think it's not always as cut and dry as people like to make it. People like to say things such as, oh, they're just all demons, they're demonic, sinister, they're evil. And I understand why some people say that. I posted that picture of not Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy the other day. And in that facial expression, it's in my community tab. Yeah, he absolutely looked demonic and sinister there. And he absolutely did some demonic and sinister things. So it would make sense. But I don't think everyone is that way. And he would have what? Antisocial personality disorder is what you would give Ted Bundy. That's what everyone who is a psychopath or a sociopath, that's really what it is. It's antisocial personality disorder, at least in America. That's how they diagnose it. In Canada, I think they do have a psychopath diagnosis. And back in the day, what they always used to say with the distinction was a psychopath is born and a sociopath is made. But when I interviewed the self-aware narcissist and borderline Kylie Rackham, we went over that distinction. And unfortunately, I can't remember what she said. But I know I said that. I know I said that part. But I know that's also that's not a full definition of what's going on. But Ted Bundy, yeah, he was a dark guy. The prison psychiatrists and psychologists that would interview him, they would remark about how he had this dark energy to him. Not good. Not good for Mr. Ted Bundy. But the narcissists that are especially lower end on the spectrum, no, I don't think they're all evil. I don't think they're all evil. But again, people do that because they feel more comfortable with the black and white distinction. They feel more comfortable with no shades of gray. Nope, 100% bad guy. And then, of course, many of them are 100% the good guy in their opinion. And again, In the beginning of after a toxic relationship or narcissistic abuse or a process of coercive control, I understand that that's why we do that, because that person needs support, encouragement, validation, 100%. And 99% of my content, that's what it is. I support, I encourage, I invalidate, or not, not invalidate, I validate. And I talk about all the toxic behaviors. I talk about narcissistic abuse. I talk about the process of coercive control. That's the majority of what I do. But occasionally, I try to get people to take a look at their side of things. And honestly, that's when I get the most pushback, of course. I could talk about narcissism all day long and their toxic behaviors. I never get pushback from that. Everyone can agree, oh, narcissists are terrible. But when I do anything different than that, when I get off the boat, so to speak, that's where the criticism comes. People don't like it. It doesn't take any courage for me just to talk about the bad behaviors of a narcissist. But what does take courage for me is to talk about how two narcissists can be in a relationship together. It does take courage to say there can be two toxic people in a relationship. And then mutual abuse is another one I'm going to go over in a minute here. But Curious One says to me, Happy Friday, Jared. Yes, Ted Bundy was calculating without contrition, entitlement on steroids with a whopping dose of depravity. That's a good way to put it. And I don't know if you saw that picture that I had, but what prompted him to make that facial expression was a psychiatrist asked him about a 12-year-old girl that he killed. And this is days, I think, before his scheduled execution. And in the beginning of that discussion, he seemed almost charming and lighthearted, and his facial expression was much more soft. But then the second that 12-year-old girl was brought up, there's this shadow that came over him. And then as he looks up, you just see this darkness, this evil look. And that's really what it is. There's an evil look. But back to what I was saying, the mutual abuse part. Generally speaking, I don't think mutual abuse is as much of a thing as some people will say it is. There are some people who say, and this guy I'm about to mention, he's the opposite of Lundy Bancroft. There's this guy named, he's a guy that thinks almost all abuse is mutual abuse. And I don't agree with that. I think they're confusing in that case reactive abuse with mutual abuse. They are not the same. That's a whole different ballgame. When someone is the abusive person and they're baiting and they're provoking and they're finally getting someone to react, that's a different story. That's not what I'm referring to here, because that's reactive abuse. More of a mutual abuse scenario would be something like both people are toxic to one another, and it can take turns. One person's more powerful 1 minute, one person's more powerful the next, and the power can shift over time. Because I think, unfortunately, some of the people that believe mutual abuse isn't a thing, no such thing, I think those are the people also that believe that women can't abuse men. If I had to guess, that's what they would say. But I don't think it's that cut and dry. I think usually there is one person who is the abuser and one person is more the victim, and one person is sucked into the process of coercive control. But sometimes there can be those two narcissistic people, one lower end on the spectrum than the other, or a narcissist in a borderline, or a borderline narcissist comorbid with another narcissist. In those cases, the power dynamics can shift. It's not always going to stay static just in one place. I think in that situation, it can go back and forth. But again, what is the point of even talking about this? Some of it's entertainment, to be honest. Some of it's entertainment. And I think just getting people to understand that it's not always going to be black and white. But if I were to listen to each individual person's situation and then they were to tell me what's going on, I could say to them what I really think. This is just a generalized video, is what this is. I can't address every single person's scenario in a generalized video because all narcissists can be a little bit different because there's different types and different levels of severity. So I say that to say if you're watching a video like this, don't just blindly believe what I say. Don't try to copy and paste what I say onto your situation because depending on what I'm talking about, it might not be a perfect match of what's going on in your situation. The variables can be a little bit different, and I don't want to confuse people unnecessarily. Hello there, Alex. And curious one and Alex in the chat. I love to see it. But it's like I said, since I'm a little bit of a night owl, I like these late night streams here. But oh yeah. So in regards to last night's stream, someone was saying to me, I gotta be very careful talking about coercive control versus safety seeking and the things that people might do when they're trying to seek safety. And to which I get it. So someone who is seeking safety who isn't narcissistic, it can still come off as being controlling sometimes. It's kind of like the example I used yesterday of a worrying, anxious parent who, in order to feel safe themselves, they have tied their feelings of safety to their kids. So they want to fix, manage, and control their kids in order to feel safe themselves. But that's a different version of it. It's not quite the narcissist version, but I wouldn't say that's completely healthy either. Now, granted, of course you're going to love your children. Of course you want them to be safe. But there's a limit to it where you still want to make sure they can grow up to become their own independent person. You want them to be autonomous. But the people who are extremely overprotective and overbearing, they really struggle with that. And this is why they say both codependents and narcissists, they are other centered. So narcissists, they fix, manage, and control other people to use them as fuel. They use them as tools and they use them as objects. The person who is more codependent or emotionally dependent, or they're just super anxious and they want to fix, manage, and control other people to regulate, that can have its own negative consequences. So the person in the comment section was saying, I got to be careful, safety seeking versus coercive control. And I would say something can be an issue because it sounded like what they were talking about was a symptom of CPTSD, maybe even narcissistic fleas. But just because something is a problem doesn't mean it's the problem in a relationship. The abuse and the abusive person's behavior, that's the problem. Now, that can create problems in the person that's a victim, and the person who is the victim, how that CPTSD manifests itself, that's going to cause different issues. Now, those are things that you're going to work on later down the line. Now, that doesn't mean you were the problem, though. More than one thing can be true at the same time. Yeah, you have this issue to work on now. It's the same thing as if you had a narcissistic parent and you develop CPTSD from having a narcissistic parent. Yeah, well, that wasn't the problem, of course, your CPTSD. You don't choose your parents. You didn't choose for them to be narcissistic. But now you have this CPTSD, and it might cause you to act in certain ways in your relationships. And now that's an issue you got to work on. It wasn't the original problem, but it has become something to work on. Relationships are always negotiations and opportunities for growth together and as individuals, but the two people actively work to find a win-win. And that's how you know you have found a healthy relationship. If you can get past the battles that you would have with a narcissistic person because you're on the same team. And this is out there. I mean, I've experienced this with people that I'm good friends with where they're women, and sometimes it's gone to more, but you just know it's safe. It's emotionally safe. You can disagree. You're compatible. And that feeling of safety is such a great foundation that once you have that, once you feel that feeling, you would never want to have something that wasn't that way again because it's night and day. Once you've gotten a little bit older and you get experience with relationships, once you've experienced what a real healthy relationship is like, you would never want to settle for anything less because it's night and day. once you feel that feeling, and this is a thing that works for, or what happens to some people is they never get it. They never get a healthier relationship, so they just don't know. They're always in toxic relationships, and that's what's normal to them. That's the dynamic they saw in their upbringing. Maybe they had a narcissistic parent and a parent that was more codependent, or a parent that just just went along to get along, an easygoing person. And that's what this kid sees as, this is what love is supposed to be like. So that person, they didn't get a good example of what a healthy relationship is supposed to be like. They didn't get a healthy demonstration. And when you didn't get a healthy demonstration, it's pretty difficult to develop it on your own. You have to really do it. You have to really do the work to get to that spot. And that's one of the hardest things, getting to that first healthy relationship, because you got to be in a good place yourself to even be in a healthy relationship. It doesn't happen if you're not in a good spot. If you are incomplete, not in a good place mental health wise, up and down, left and right, in the process of addictions, then it's really tough. And those are things that I've experienced all of that. And when I was in those moments, it was hard. It just wasn't going to happen. And frankly, for me, it took until my 30s, my mid 30s. Now, I had some relationships in my lower 20s that were compatible, and they got along because I wasn't into them as much. So, and that makes it easier too. Like if you're not into them, you don't get those emotional spikes of really caring. Which is why some people, especially guys, what happens to them is a lot of the women that they're not into will like them. Why does that happen? Well, because the guy's more of being themselves, and they're more comfortable in their own skin around them because they're just not that into the person. But when that same guy is into around somebody he's super into, then all of a sudden he gets super awkward. Then he gets weird and all these other things, and it becomes much more difficult for him to be himself. And the same thing happens to women too, with guys they're really into. Yeah, I mean, I always say, if when we're at our best, that's when we're the most likely to meet someone at their best. But if we're really struggling, it's going to be difficult, because let's examine this here for a second. If someone's really healthy and you're really not healthy, why is that person going to get with you? Why would a really healthy person get with you if you're not in a good place? Because my argument would be, if they really want to be with you and you're not in a good place, then that they might not be in that good of a place either, because now they want to save you maybe. What's their motivation for wanting to be with you if you're in a bad place? That's a very important question to ask. Now, there can be exceptions perhaps. There can always be exceptions in one form or another. And maybe there's like a workplace romance where they know this person might not be in a good place, but the attraction can still be there. Yeah, that can happen too. Yep. And so the attraction can trick people sometimes. And if I'm being honest, that is also what's happened to me before too, where you're driven by your physical desires. And then before you know it, you're in a bad spot. And for a lot of guys, I think if they're being honest with themselves, that's happened a lot to them, I think, where, they are thinking with the wrong head perhaps, and then before they know it, they're in this rough spot and they're thinking, "Oh man, what happened? How did I get here?" Oh, well, you're being driven by nature, and maybe it's because you were younger. But as you're older, that doesn't happen as much anymore. Like you simmer out a little bit, you get to think a little more rationally, and you don't make as the careless decisions you once did. I know I don't anymore, but in my 20s into lower 30s even, I was a wild boy. I was a wild boy making wild decisions, and I had the consequences to show it. That's how it goes. But for the people getting to that first healthy relationship, how do you get there? Well, it takes doing the work. Dr. Nicole LaPera has a book called How to Do the Work. The thing about that book was I read it and then I was like, huh, I don't know what the work is. I read the book and I still don't know what the work is. But what the work for me was, I think everyone should do this. If you write on the 12 steps of Narcotics Anonymous and you can fill in the blank with addiction, with whatever you might struggle with in your own life, because I do think everyone can use something. The only variables are what they use and how frequently they use it. For example, some people want to escape with gambling. Some people want to escape with shopping. Some people want to escape with food. Some people want to escape with drugs and alcohol. Some people want to escape with sex. Some people want to escape with porn or video games. But most people, they have something they're trying to escape with. Again, they might not do it all the time. It might not even be an issue for them, but they still have something that they go to. And some people do it with work. Some people escape life by working. It's one of the more productive addictions to have, but it can still be a form of spiritual bypassing. In my life now, if I were to have one, that's probably what it would be, the work one. I have my supplement routine, which also is very important to me, but the work is my escape. It used to be drinking more, but the hangover has gotten in the way of that for me. I can't freaking drink anymore. Drinking, I was like hangovers are fatal now. I'm 40 years old. Hell no. It's not worth the trade. I was listening to Tim Ferriss one day and he had said, drinking is trading tomorrow's happiness for today. And I was like, that's exactly what it is. Trading tomorrow's happiness for today. And just him putting it like that, it's always stuck with me. So I don't drink anymore because of that. Don't get me wrong. It would probably be fun for the night, but it doesn't always hit right either. Sometimes I'll drink and it doesn't hit right. And so it's not good. But it's been a while. It's been a while since I've even done that. But back to the point, doing the work on yourself is getting to a good baseline. A baseline always starts with mental health and eliminating addictions. Because sometimes, if you have a mental health issue, anxiety, depression, a personality disorder, CPTSD, ADHD, maybe you're on the autistic spectrum and you don't know it. You got to get into a good place with all those things. Maybe you have bipolar or bipolar 2. You got to find a way to get to a stable ground with your mental health, because I'm someone who has struggled with all of that, whether it was addiction, severe anxiety, severe depression, suicidal idealizations, all of that. I totally get it. So there's nothing you can say to me that I wouldn't understand. I've been there. I've been there with all that. And I think that's part of what makes me the kind of helper I am today. And for me, my supplement routine does a lot. It put pieces of my brain together that just were disconnected before. And that's why, people say today the chemical imbalance theory of mental illness is false. But I don't know. For me, in my undiagnosed autism that I had, they say autism affects the GABA system. And my supplement routine, some of it hits the GABA system. And it really helps me speak. It helps me speak clearly. It helps me with things that I just wasn't good at before. I wasn't able to speak clearly. I would slur my words. I wouldn't be able to look people in the eye. I was like really herky-jerky in my movements. It wasn't fun. It didn't look and feel very confident at all. So I had that version of anxiety. And then I had this thing for a little while where if I treated my anxiety, then I would feel more depressed. If I didn't treat the anxiety, I would feel less depressed, but I would also feel more anxious. And it took me a while to get that balancing act down, because super high anxiety sucks. My version of it, the undiagnosed autism version of it, how I would explain it to a neurotypical or an average Joe, it's kind of like feeling a low dose benzodiazepine withdrawal at all times. But I wouldn't feel it when I was by myself. I would only feel it in front of other people. So whatever other people did, it would bring that feeling to the surface, and it was freaking terrible. But that was number one, getting to a routine with anxiety and depression where I could even begin to think about other areas of life. Because if you're feeling severe anxiety, that's going to taint how you see everything. If you're severely depressed, you're going to see life through the tinted lens of depression. That's also going to suck in a different way. And there's layers of depression. Some depression, you're not going to get out of bed. Other depression, you just feel this gnawing angst. Other depression, you just lose interest in things. It just depends. Thank you, Virginia Lou. Black sheep and scapegoats are very welcome here because, after all, I am the shepherd of black sheep. The shepherd of black sheep is a black sheep and a shepherd because he's been to all these places. So the people that struggle with anxiety, struggle with depression, I've been there. You got it. Well, I'm glad. Which parts in particular, because I can go into them further. But the anxiety and depression, so I tell people start with the basics. What are the basics? Vitamin D3. I take 6,000 IUs of vitamin D3 a day. Niacinamide, vitamin B3. I take 1,000 milligrams a few times a day. That's the upper max dose that is recommended. And then there's magnesium. There is zinc. I take some biotin. I take a couple probiotics. What else do I take? Some other B vitamins, B12, B6, folate. All those are the foundational pieces, but there's more. And I tell people only do one thing at a time. Start one thing at a time. Stop taking one thing at a time so you know it's doing what. My other rule is you only take things that are each individual ingredient. I don't like proprietary blends because when you take a proprietary blend is when there's more than one ingredient in a thing. You don't know what's doing what. But when you isolate the variable, one thing, then you know what's doing what. And understand, not all brands are created equally. And what's the other? And everyone's body is going to be different too. D3, B3, mag, zinc, blah, blah, blah. Yep. I take all those, but I also take way more. You're talking about recognizing the internal problem, which has to be addressed somehow to find the solutions. Yes. And I mean, part of what I did was to learn this. I looked up the symptoms of things. All right. What's the symptoms of low serotonin? What's the symptoms of low dopamine? What's the symptoms of low norepinephrine? What's the symptoms of low epinephrine? What's the symptoms of low testosterone? What's the symptoms of low estrogen? And hormones play a big part too. I take things to regulate my hormones because as a man, that's important. And as a woman, that's important too. Powdered fruit and veggies, surprisingly effective. Hey, I am all for whatever works. As a wizard, I have a weird diet. Every night I have popcorn, orange, and some carrots. Popcorn for fiber, orange for a fruit serving, carrots to get the popcorn out of my teeth. I'm very regimented. People would think I'm weird if they're looking in from the outside, but it is what it is. But I mean, I'll go into my supplement routine more one day. But the point of me going over that is I had to get to a good place with that anxiety and depression because if I didn't, it was getting in the way of everything. And when I say that, I mean everything. Not even thinking about career, not even thinking about anything else. I was very childish for a long time. And then for a while, the only thing I cared about also was trying to find my soulmate. That was a huge distraction for me too. In my 20s, I didn't care nearly as much about my ambition in life back then. It was more important to me to find someone to love. And that was me seeking that love from an incomplete place. I was seeking this love and affection because I couldn't give it to myself. So I wanted someone to come in there and love me like a mother would probably, because my mom, she was a very loving and probably overprotective mother, which caused different problems in me. But I think I wanted to recreate that. I wanted that soothing feeling of a woman loving me. But that's coming from an immature place. That whole feeling, immature. Probiotics have helped me a lot. Lots of green herbs and playing music. I've been a musician for 30 plus years, volunteering animals. What instruments do you play? Or are you a singer? I take two probiotics. I take one from, I take them both from the same place. Perfect Biotics. One's the regular version, 30 billion CFUs, and then I take extra strains. And I'll tell you what, both of them absolutely impact my mood. You wouldn't think so, but our gut flora is super important with our mood. I think they say 80% of our serotonin is made in the gut. Did you know that? That's why they call it the gut mind connection. And if I don't take my probiotics, I don't know how it works, but something's not quite right. But I think maybe they help the rest of my supplement routine work better and I get the best of digestion and other things. But it's a big deal. Probiotics they're a big deal. I don't know much about seaweed. Is that like a supplement too? I hear you say them. I've heard good things about it. And I guess the thing would be if you're fatigued, what's it coming from? Is it coming from adrenal fatigue, high cortisol, lack of sleep, caffeine addiction? Now, I mean, I have a caffeine addiction. I got 20 ounces of coffee a day. A 5 hour energy in the morning, and then a 20-ounce coffee. And I have that every day. Some people would say it's probably not good, but I don't have too many negative effects from it. Breathing, 5 healing sounds. That's irritation, neutralizing. It's uncanny, plus other sounds. Do you like ASMR? I was big into ASMR 5 years ago, and I've thought about doing ASMR for narcissistic abuse healing too, where if you put that on to go to sleep, things about building your trust and your perception of reality again, or if you're a man, healing your connection to the feminine, if you're a woman, healing your connection to the masculine, because that's a thing too, especially in this day and age where there's a gender war out there. I think that would be beneficial for people. Who do you listen to? See, what are the symptoms of adrenal collapse? My friend, she had that happen to her too. I guess it's just exhaustion. Is that what it is? Or just probably no energy and exhaustion. So I used to listen to Raffy Taffy. I've listened to that British dude. I can't remember his name. Who else have I listened to? I've listened to Diddley. I've listened to, who's the woman? I can't remember the names. I haven't watched them enough. ASMR Darling I used to listen to. Gentle Whispering. Yeah, I mean, I think, and thyroid's key because I think that's where your hormones are made. A lot of them, they process things. So they can turn whatever's going on in your liver, like into testosterone, estrogen, etc. 5 healing sounds is TCM Chinese medicine. I have a master's degree. That's pretty cool. What's the is it a real master's degree or are you saying you have a master's degree in that? Now that's pretty interesting actually. So I don't like the tapping. I like the whispering and the gentle sounds myself. I've never gotten into the tapping. But I like the examinations the most, I think, where like say you're going to an eye doctor and they're asking you the soothing questions. I like that. It might be the autistic part of me that likes that. I don't know. Acupuncturist. I love that. I used to be more into hypnotism because I'm big into mindset stuff. And I was like, because magic stuff is fascinating to me. You think about someone like Chris Angel, Mind Freak. How does he do that? How is it? Because some of the stuff is trick of the eye, but not all of it. is trick of the eye. Yeah, some of the stuff takes a lot of skill and perseverance that I don't know how they're doing, but it's pretty interesting to me. Yeah, thoughts indeed are everything. The power of our thoughts. I mean, once you understand the power of your thoughts, you would never think anything bad about yourself again. And I hear some people tell me things like that where they're talking bad about themselves. And I think, no, like, stop. Like, don't say you're stupid. Don't say you're dumb. Don't say anything negative that you can't do this. As Henry Ford said, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right. I also like ASMR or library ASMR and hearing the gentle stamping and book jacket crinkling. Now, I can get down with that. Do you have any recommendations of who to listen to? Maybe I'll try to invite them on the show. And last night, the woman was telling me I should invite Dr. Psych Mom, which I didn't do yet, but I should do that. Yes, I have. I got a book on NLP. It's about using language to hack minds. Some people use it to heal, some to manipulate. Yeah, the pickup community uses it, I know, to manipulate. But that's where I learned. I read a book on NLP. They told you whenever you smell the smell that you really like, you put your thumb to your middle finger like this, and it's like an anchor. So whenever, because the smell is very powerful, just like music is very powerful. They're both like a time machine. But so my smell was when you hear a burning leaves or a burning fireplace, especially in the autumn or the early autumn, late summer, in the evening, the hoodie and shorts weather. But the feeling that I would get from that is a magical feeling. So I put as an anchor your thumb to your second knuckle on your middle finger. And what's the other thing they said to do there? I can't remember what else it was, but it's been a while since I've dove into NLP. But I find it fascinating. I used NLP to get a college class credit. I approve is the phrase I hid in the appeal letter. His reply, ha! You know, say that's how it works. The dude who wrote the Dilbert comic strip, the heck's his name? Unfortunately, I think he has cancer right now. But Scott Adams is his name. But he was on Tim Ferriss's show a long time ago. And he reinvigorated my interest in hypnotism because he said a hypnotist told him to start writing things down 15 times a day. And he did. He started writing down times 15 times a day. And he took the GMATs and he wrote down he was going to get a 94 on the GMATs. And then when he did it, lo and behold, he got a freaking 94. And I was like, you know what? I don't believe in coincidence. There's something to it. It's the closest thing to magic there is. Cedar pine, bergamot smoke. Interesting. I love it. Yeah, I mean, people should take note. Some people don't believe this kind of thing. They get cynical. The hard-nosed science people, they're the ones that get the most cynical, in my opinion. They got to find some rational explanation. No, it's not that. It's like, nah, sometimes there's a little bit of magic out there. Sometimes things aren't so easily explained as they would like it to be. Yeah, and I mean, with great power comes great responsibility. It's not always going to be anything that can be a tool, anything that has power. It can be used for not so good. You see that with religion, you see that with spirituality, you see that with any object like a baseball bat. A baseball bat can be used for playing baseball or can be used as a weapon to try to kill someone. It just depends. Sleazy. Like I said, I don't know how do people use it now? It used to be popular 10 years ago or so. I don't hear much about it anymore. But yeah, that could easily slip into that territory, and people can make it sleazy for sure. Nowadays, I don't know what people do now. I think with the pickup people now, the pickup people aren't as cringe perhaps as the red pill folks can be sometimes, but they're all still out there. They're all still out there. It's just a different thing. But I prefer hypnotism to NLP now. And I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Brandon Clearminds. He's got a pretty big Instagram page now. So here's a story about Brandon Clearminds. He's got a story very similar to Raquel, the capacity expert, but he started his Instagram page in November. And he's already got over 400,000 Instagram subscribers. Now, he's only on there, though. He doesn't do much. I think he's got a little bit on Facebook. I don't think he has much on YouTube here. But he blew up. He blew up on Instagram. And he likes to use, and this is his thing, he points. He points at a title, and the title says 5 ways a narcissist will do something. And then he points to the comment section, and there's an arrow that says read comment section. And a lot of times he uses the same music, which I think might be an element of hypnotism in there. But he's blown up. But what I thought was interesting about him was I invited him on, and we've been in touch. He wants to use hypnotism to help people heal narcissistic abuse. And I was like, great. I'm all for it. Yes, creativity is essential. It helped our species survive, and even crows have it as highly intelligent, successful birds. A murder of crows. You've seen that video where a crow was messing with cats? They're pretty smart. Pretty smart. I used NLP to get a very dumb chat to donate money. I don't know sounds like I don't know. It works like gangbusters. After 20 minutes, they donated to feel included and important. Wild. Don't let the campaigners and the fundraisers find out that. They'll be all over you for that. A very dumb chat. I don't know more. I just spammed it with I don't know more. NLP plus other messages about fitting in and being cool. I mean, it sounds like you took advantage of a groupthink place. Is that what happened? I mean, you see that a lot. If you get a big enough group of people all saying something is true or saying something is terrible, it takes courage. It takes courage to stand up against that. And this is the philosophy that the timeshare sellers they'll use. They'll say they get people to give you a round of applause when you sell. And then when you sell, they give you a big round of applause. They want everyone else to feel included when they buy. Very manipulative, very emotionally manipulative. And those groups, they're tough. The gaslighting, Virginia. Meet Virginia. How often have you heard that song? You probably get tired of it. Meet Virginia. But that's the gaslighting. I see that with Chris Perry's page. And there's dude version of it too. But like Chris Perry's page, Derek Jackson's page on Facebook, they gaslight. He serves up the stuff for the women that they eat it up. And I get it. It's helpful to hear that message, especially when you're just getting out of an abusive relationship. Very validating, very encouraging, very supportive. But there comes a time, I think, where that message is not what you need anymore. The growth is somewhere else. Because my pet peeve is when men or women, they would say, if a man says, nope, it's all women that are the problem. Or then women will say, nope, it's all men that are the problem. Men just haven't done the work. It's like, there are some men and some women who have both done the work. And there are some men and some women who both haven't done the work. I hate the massive generalizations. There she was to see the queen. That was a 90s song, or is that early 2000s now? That was a magical era. That early 2000s era. I started thinking about it again the other day because I went to Panda Express a few weeks ago. And the Panda Express fortune cookie said, "Smile like you mean it." And I was like, how do I know this song? Smile. What is this? Smile like you mean it. And of course, it's a killer song, Smile Like You Mean It. And it's from 2002 or 3 or 1. But that was when I was right after high school for me, or in high school. And that was a magical time because iPods were around, the internet was around, but no social media, no Facebook, no Instagram, no TikTok, no YouTube, no nothing. Babies and surprises. I don't know them. I don't know that. Is that a song? So yeah, so you're 5 years older than me. I was born 1985. But our generation, because we're in the same generation, we got the best of both worlds in a way. So I got the late 80s into the 90s. 90s was a good time. Like 90s was, and a lot of it's just the fact that there wasn't responsibility back then. But I mean, I got a pretty good upbringing and wasn't perfect, of course. There was other issues going on, but it was still pretty cool. I liked the 90s TV, 90s movies. It was fun times. Ah, okay. I got to listen to the song now so I can get reminded. DJ when? Late, early 2000s? The Killers Smile Like You Mean It. It's a good song. Now that sounds familiar. Or the other 90s favorite, the Chicken of China, the Chinese chicken. Yeah, so we're all the same age pretty much. Well, I guess you're both a little bit older than me. I'm 85. And 1979 always reminds me of the Smashing Pumpkins song, 1979. That was that 90s era where like radio was big and CDs were big. I mean, that was a wild era. That was wild. What other songs have Virginia in it besides Meet Virginia? I gotta think if I know any. I bet you Elvis has one. Does Elvis have a song with Virginia in it? I bet he does. DJ at Rocket 93, 95.3 FM, Stockholm, Sweden. Oh, is that where you are now, Sweden? There's a friend of mine from Sweden too that she met me on TikTok. She's younger. We got to look it up. I'm going to look it up now because of you. But I've never been to Sweden. I've never been to the Denmark, Sweden, Norway. That would make sense. Well, West Virginia. My little brother lives in West Virginia, and that's their theme song. They make all the kids sing in the elementary school. Almost Heaven, West Virginia. Blue Ridge Mountains, Shenandoah River. That's right. I went to WVU, and that was our song of the football games, where that was a wild time too, because the police officers, they would hand all the kids a cup to drink because there they just didn't care. It was wild. It was a classic. Take Me Home Country Roads. But in West Virginia elementary schools, they make all the kindergartners sing that song because that's where my little brother lives. And he's got two girls that have been through kindergarten, one coming up, and they all sing that song, Almost Heaven, West Virginia. Older than the mountains, younger than the trees. But I like the analogy of the song there too, that when you go home, take me home country roads, because what's home? Home's many things. Home really is the people. There's part of it's the land, but a lot of it's really the people that are home. That's the big thing, I would say. Now, see, Texas has probably got a bunch of songs. And same thing with New York. New York's got a bunch. New Jersey has so few that when Bruce Springsteen sings something about the Jersey Shore, it becomes a fanatical hit. Jersey Girl. So there's a live version of that song that's pretty cool because he even just says the words Jersey and all the people lose it and go wild. But what was it going back into? Oh, but like with the healthy relationship thing again, got to get into a good place with anxiety and depression. And and honestly, that can take a long time. And some people never get there. I don't want to say they do because they don't. Some people struggle with that for life. But I'm lucky to have gotten to a good place with it. But then once you get into the good place with anxiety and depression, limiting the self-inflicted wounds like alcohol and drug abuse, etc., then what you do is you try to build your ideal life. Then you think about, okay, what do you want to do with work? And then mindset is number one too, because if you don't have the right mindset, everything's going to crumble from there. So you get into your mindset and then mind, body, spirit, and then you work your way outward from there. And what I'm talking about is a very simplified version of this, but this is how it goes. That's the path I put people on. You would think, but Texas just sings a one deep song in the heart of Texas. That's surprising. I think the Eagles are from Texas. Don Henley. I think Don Henley's from Texas. Well, yes, it is. It's not a single event. People who think it's a single event. Or I saw a post the other day that said, everyone wants to heal until the medicine is discipline. Terrence Howard said that. And then the other thing what made me think of was everyone wants to heal until the medicine is accountability or admitting when you're wrong. I like the Eagles. I am not like a dude from the Big Lebowski who hates the Eagles. I've liked the Eagles. Hotel California, Lion Eyes, Victim of Love, Duel in Dalton, Life in the Fast Lane. Or if you really want to get blown away, you listen to the lyrics of King of Hollywood. And if you listen to the lyrics of King of Hollywood, it's as if he's talking about Harvey Weinstein. But this song is like 1979 or 8 or 80, way before Harvey Weinstein. But he's talking, it's almost as if he was narrating that song. It's wild. But I loved the Eagles, New Kid in Town, because there's two versions of the Eagles. There's pre-Joe Walsh Eagles, and then post-Joe Walsh Eagles. Post-Joe Walsh Eagles, a little more rocky. Pre-Joe Walsh, a little more Western-y. Deep detox. It's like pre-flu for months when before you get sick but you feel off. Deep detox from what? I think healing is sometimes nobilized in weird ways and nobody knows where the end stop is, so they feel ashamed like they're failing. So here's my thoughts on that. I don't think there's such a thing as healed. I think it's always healing. And mostly the people that I've heard say that they're healed, I've usually seen them do things that makes me think, I don't think so. I don't think you're healed. I think healing is a process because no one's perfect. There's always something to be trying to grow and improve in. And I think that's a good attitude to have. Now, granted, what gets in the way sometimes, people get tired of self-improvement. Like I go in waves where sometimes I'm really gung-ho about self-improvement. And then other times I can get bored with it, which is, it's whatever. Sometimes you just live life in there too. But I think it's also just as important when you read a self-help book to really try to apply the lessons to your life. That's the thing. Because if you just read it without applying the lessons, what good is that? Not nearly as good. How about a digital detox or a detox from life? Yeah. So, I mean, I was obsessed with self help stuff in my late 20s to early 30s. The difference between then and now for me, I think I had more energy back then. I was, I would like to go out and do more things. Now, I'm a little more of a homebody now. And because social media gets in the way, honestly, like when I'm doing content, it takes a lot of your mental capacity, it takes a lot of your mental bandwidth. So I don't have the energy to put towards other things. My favorite book on consistency, see if you can get it. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. And my favorite book on consistency is The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. That is the great book that I think every teen should read. That that and Master the Money Game by Tony Robbins, because both of them really emphasize consistency. Tony Robbins says you want to invest in things like the S&P 500 because they perform better than most mutual funds. I mean, I would say kids now, put your money in Bitcoin. But you don't gamble on some altcoin, but put your money in Bitcoin. It's $100,000 now. It's just a matter of time before it gets a million. It's boring, but it's valuable. People want to take shortcuts though with the altcoins. And I was guilty of that before too. But it's Aesop's fable. Bitcoin is the tortoise, altcoins are the hare. Altcoins, they might outperform Bitcoin sometimes, but slow and steady wins the race. Healing is there for everybody in some way, but a lot of the advice requires privilege. How does the homeless DoorDash mother of a baby in her car do self care? Yeah, I mean, and this is where it's a very good point, and you are correct. Bitcoin is proven. That's why Bitcoin's safe. But the point I would say with that is there's two different ways people look at things, right? People on one hand are going to do the self improvement porn. People like Alex Hormozy, Tim Ferriss, Tony Robbins. And I think absolutely that has its place. But then there's the other people that want to work more towards the system. And that's where people that are more Democrat and leftist would think. They don't do as much of the capitalist porn. They do, no, let's work on the systems to try to help everybody. So, and it's tough. Like, not everyone has the same starting point. Some people are starting way behind the eight ball in a way that, and these are the people that are born on third base and hit and think they've hit a triple. I mean, I'm big into prayer. I think some people try to demonize prayer or religion, but when you've gone to self help programs like I have, such as NA, you begin to see the power of some of that stuff because they don't have a denominational belief set there in terms of, no, we're going to believe in a Christian God or uh, a Buddhist God or a Muslim Allah. No, they just say build a belief in a higher power. Whatever works for you is whatever works for you. And I've seen that work in people's lives. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's some narcissistic people that, they stop drinking or doing drugs and they work the steps. And if anything's going to help them, something like that will. And I think there's even studies now about that where 12-step programs have been proven to be pretty effective for helping narcissists. Probably only the lower to moderate versions, I would say, but it's good to know something can help. I don't know what that means. That's what I mean. The Antichrist rebranded, self-defense only peace. Interesting. Or the anarchist, not Antichrist. Yeah, I don't do NA anymore, but it did help me for a while. It did it gave me a baseline. And a lot of the CBT stuff that I talk about, That's where I learned it. And there's a lot of beneficial things if you really do the work. And what really prompted me to do the work was all of the pain and anguish that I was feeling. For me, that's a big motivator. Well, I guess they would say better late than never. Born again. Are you born again Christian? Hope I don't get banned. Former Bernie Sanders volunteer. I want better safe social safety nets and workplace protections, healthcare for everyone, divorced from profit. I mean, that's the socialized medicine thought. And this is something that if the Democrats in America were smart, they would be able to get the middle income to lower Republicans on their side with that. Because almost everyone can admit that healthcare is a racket in a way. So I'm for those kinds of social safety nets. Some of the conservative pundits in America, what they've done is they've tricked people a little bit into thinking things that other countries have as a social safety net is like socialism or communism, but that's not really what it is. But I will say socialized medicine will have different problems than say the system in America now. So right now, private healthcare with insurance has certain problems. Socialized medicine will have different problems, but it could be, you could say it's a step in the right direction, even though it's different problems. Yeah. I mean, CBT, DBT, I haven't shared my story for a while. If I truly shared my story, that could be a long story. That could be an hour or two of a story. Because if I start in the teenage years and get to where I am now, if I really went into detail, there's a lot to talk about and a lot of different issues to go over, from bullying to addiction to anxiety to depression to dating woes to NA to leaving NA to thinking I had borderline to realizing I really just had undiagnosed autism, all sorts, all sorts. I like that term allopathic. Allopathic medicine is suspicious. What was the truth bomb about the different problems? Yeah, I mean, like you said, they've convinced people that it wouldn't be good for them, but I think it would probably be good for a sector of people. Might be different problems, but it'd probably be an improvement. Because right now, FDA and Big Pharma, I'm not a big fan of them, especially because they don't like my supplement routine. My ex is an arc, and I am as well. When I called her out about it, she got defensive and went no contact. What the fuck do I do? Well, there's not much you can do in that situation. What you could do is you work on how you present it to her, because if you're a narcissist as well, that she's hypersensitive to criticism and perceived criticism. So you would really have to sandwich it between a compliment. Like, you know what? Like, I think you're doing great. I like this great quality. I like this great quality. But have you thought about this? And then sandwich it between another compliment. That's what I would do. But, if she went no contact, that means she's not willing. It means she's not willing to come to the table with you. And some of them aren't. But, and maybe you can put her in the direction of some of the self aware narcissists that are doing content. Maybe the Bat Wolf, Lee Hammock, Nameless Narcissist, Kylie Rackham. Who else? Even HG Tudor or Sam Vaknin, they would all qualify as that too. How did you call her out about being? Hmm, I don't know where I went there for a minute. Yeah, that's my question for you. How did you call her out about it? And what makes you think that she is? Just like Axl Rose said, just a little patience. Dang, Jared, I sincerely appreciate the courage and your honesty with self-reflection in your journey to do the best you can as a responsible person who's growing every day. Like I say, I try. I try to share from the depths of the things I've gone through because I truly believe that's what's going to help the most amount of people. So I try to live that. And am I perfect with what I do? Absolutely not. I've still got my own issues. Like I said, the autism can be a thing. Narcissistic traits could be a thing. I interviewed her. Did you watch it? We talked for 2.5 hours, Cluster B Milkshake and I. Oh, okay. So her mom knows. What are the behaviors? What are her behaviors that she's doing? I guess if you recognize yourself as one, that's how I would sandwich it there too. It's like, hey, I get it. You're like me. And there's nothing wrong with that. You didn't choose to be this. That's what I would emphasize with narcissists. You didn't choose this. Who chooses to be a narcissist? No one chooses that. So that's how I would sandwich it like that. I love Guns N' Roses, the best live band. Late 80s into early 90s. Phenomenal. I appreciate the support. But I'm going to do more of these longer videos too, because I like trying to build a connection and the community more with people. The shorts aren't really good for that. The shorts are good for packing a punch and getting some concise knowledge out there, but that's different. That's different than doing this. Yeah, you check it out. It's a while ago now. A year and a half ago, maybe even 2 years ago. Holy mackerel. I always framed it as we were soulmates, and she did too. Well, she might have split on you. You tried to bring something to her attention, and then she painted you black. And now she can't see you in a positive light anymore. Because narcissists, they lack object constancy. So once they get a negative feeling towards somebody, they can't see him in a positive light. All black. Borderlines do that too. Yeah, it was good. I have no idea what we talked about. The one thing I remember we talked about was boundaries versus preferences. And looking back, I might even agree with what she said about that now, as I've gotten more clear on my thoughts on boundaries, preferences, and rules. Yeah, I love their France. They're live in 92, France. You Could Be Mine and Civil War. That's when Axl Rose was at his most powerful, best vocal range he's ever had. Yeah, definitely check it out and let me know what you think. The amygdala veil. I like that too. But yeah, for the curious one, I do think there he is. I don't think it's unhealthy to believe in soulmates. I think the belief in soulmates can manifest into some healthy, unhealthy beliefs, perhaps. It can manifest into some unhealthy behaviors, but the belief in itself, I don't think is unhealthy. But I will also say, I think even if you do believe in soulmates, you're better off believing there isn't. Because let's say you believe in a soulmate. Unfortunately, what can happen with that is people can not do the work because they'll think something like, well, my soulmate will just accept me exactly as I am. And that means I don't have to work as hard because they're just going to accept me as I am. But I think, as I said yesterday, my favorite definition of a soulmate is the person that makes you the most you can be and forces you to grow the most as a person. But I also think it's better to act as if there's no such thing, but to believe instead when I'm the best version of myself, that's when I'm more likely to meet someone who is the best version of themselves. I think that's a more pragmatic thing to believe than a soulmate. Now, narcissists will try to twist and distort that sometimes. They'll try to use that spiritual component or twin flames as a part of the love bombing. I wouldn't say it's always bad, but it can definitely not be so good sometimes. Yeah, it definitely can. I have no arguments here. Yeah, that is a toxic belief. If you can't be happy without them, now that's emotional dependency, and that's not good. Now, and unfortunately, people who believe in soulmates, some of them may believe that. That's why I say it's more pragmatic to not believe in it, act as if they don't exist. Personally, I believe there's a fair amount of people that you can have good connections with. I don't think it's limited to just one. Thank you. I mean, it's important because I've had a lot of time to think through these things, and I used to believe in a soulmate, but I wasn't getting the results in life that I wanted from believing in a soulmate. And what we're doing, if it's not working, it means we have to change something. And some people make the mistake of trying to change others or blaming others, and that's not going to help. We can change our side of the street. We can change what's in our control. That is it. I can have some avoidant attachment, honestly. I can have some fear of being smothered because my parents were very overprotective and I would lose my autonomy. So I don't like controlling. I don't like people who are controlling. It makes me feel trapped and I want to get out. So that can be a bit of an avoidant attachment. And I used to have more of an anxious attachment, but I don't have that as much anymore. One-itis, a terrible affliction. One-itis. I mean, as a man in particular, a terrible affliction. It's very important to have an internal locus of control. What's the word for it? Mental point of origin. That's the word for it. A lot of people don't have that though. It's like the expression when a codependent is drowning, someone else's life flashes before their eyes. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend ghosting. Certainly not. Now, have I done that temporarily? Yeah, I think I did years ago. And those are things that I regret now. There's one girl I did this with in particular that we were friends for a while. And this is before I knew about my avoidant attachment. And then, like, we were just friends, but slowly over time, she started to like me. And then we drank, and one time we like made out, and we didn't do that again for a while. And then we took some time apart, and then we reunited and we made out, like passionately make out. And then the next day, she was bombarding me with phone calls, and I really just got super uncomfortable. And I wasn't mature enough at the time to say, hey, just can you chill? Because I had a fear of intimacy. I didn't want to be smothered either. And so I went the other direction. That is not how I would handle that today. And it's one of those things I regret now. I kind of look back at that and I'm like, damn, I shouldn't have done that. Yeah. Yeah, that's how I saw it. But all I needed to do was say, no, like, can you just chill for a minute? Like, I get this uncomfortable feeling when you do this. Like, it's like too much. And but I didn't communicate it. So that part's on me. Yeah. I mean, and here's the thing, those kinds of things wouldn't happen to me today because I would know how to handle them. I would say the right thing. But when I was younger and dumber, I didn't say the right things. I said dumb things. I said socially uncalibrated things. I did dumb things with my actions. And so, not good. I mean, and part of that's part of growing up. But depending on what your baseline is, some people's growing up process is much more painful than others. Mine was pretty painful because I was pretty socially awkward and pretty uncalibrated. Yeah, I mean, I still got to own it though. Like if I were to talk to her today, I would say, yeah, I fucked up with that. And I do feel bad about that. Now, I didn't have the tools, but that's still not an excuse. It's not an excuse to not have the tools. Like I didn't know what I didn't know, but the best amends they would say is making sure you don't do that again. Make sure you change the behavior so that if the same circumstances come around, you don't make the same mistakes. That's important. Well, I haven't really had the opportunity to act out on it recently. I think some of it's gone, most of it's gone away. But given the right set of circumstances, I don't know. I don't know if I'd feel it. But I do know I would be more equipped to communicate something. I do know that. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible to thrive as an autistic person. There's varying levels of it. There's much more severe versions and less severe versions. My version is less severe enough so that with supplement routine, I can appear fairly neurotypical, I think. And I'm lucky. I'm lucky though to have that ability to close that gap because without my routine, it would be a completely different story. I fully admit that. Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly okay on my own. In fact, I prefer being alone now. My issue with anything would be the feeling of being trapped in a long term relationship because, in my experience, relationships end. And the reason relationships end is sometimes me, but sometimes it's the other person. People's feelings change. And when a person's feelings change, their actions change, and then the things can end. It's not like back in the day in my grandparents' generation where you get married right after high school and stay together for life. How often do you see that anymore? I don't see it very much, but that's how they did. And I was talking to a friend of mine tonight. We were talking about, I think it's important for people to have a plan because women do need a different plan than men, depending on what they want from life. Women have more of a timeline in terms of kids, etc. So it's like, okay, do you want to be a career woman? Do you want to make sure you have a husband and kids? What do you want? I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, but I do think knowing what you want, you will then have your priorities down and then you'll make actions in congruence with what your priorities are. Because it's tough. I think some people get misled and they think, oh, yeah, you can become a lawyer and a doctor and then you'll still be able to get married and have kids and you won't run out of time. Well, that all depends. That certainly all depends. If you're not waiting to even think of anything serious until you're after 30, you're cutting it close. You're cutting it close. I mean, the human body, I mean, by your late teens, you're able to be pregnant. And by you can be getting people pregnant by that age too. So it's just something to be mindful of for people. Like if I have kids one day, when the time comes, that's what I would say. I say, hey, you got to act in accordance to what your priorities are. Because whether you consciously are aware of your priorities or not, you are you're going to be acting them out, whether you realize it or not. Your actions will show what your priorities are. And if you ever say, I don't have enough time, what you're really saying is, it's not a priority. Yes. Yes. I mean, health is one of those things that until you lose it, sometimes you can take it for granted. But then if you're having a health problem, you understand how important health is. And just like that dude who survived the India plane crash, holy mackerel, could you imagine him? I don't know how he survived. They say he jumped out the emergency exit, but he probably has a brand new lease on life, that guy. Like, holy mackerel, I'm the only person to survive this plane crash? Are you kidding me? Life and the economy can throw wrenches in the wheel despite care. Of course. Of course. The Navy SEALs say no plan survives contact with the enemy. But here's the thing. I think a plan is important, but I also think flexibility is important too. But I think it's good to be aiming at something at least. And then you can roll with the punches once you're aiming. But if you're not aiming at anything, that can be a problem. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I have a shorts coming out about narcissistic fleas. And I would say narcissistic fleas are probably a symptom of CPTSD, if I had to guess. Yes, some people don't know the game they're playing. So I try to make people aware of the game they're playing. Another quote that I like is by Tom Bilyeu. He says, if you don't know what you want to be doing in 5 years, you're already doing it. And I was like, oh, that's exactly right. The mud building survived too, just saying. So you think, people were saying they have a hard time believing that he really did survive. What do you think happened? What acts out? CPTSD? My ex, who I loved, was healthy, motivated, and adored. Ugh, that's the worst. So I was like 20 years ago. Not that long ago. If you're my age, that's like 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I mean, that's a shame. We're sorry to hear that. Yeah, I mean, it's complex. Complex PTSD is, right? Because it's prolonged exposure as opposed to a single event. Similar to a prolonged exposure in war, prolonged exposure to coercive control or narcissistic abuse. Yeah, I saw him. I mean, some people are saying they think he's not who he says he is, but I haven't done my homework on that. I'm not sure what he is. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's possible. Give it enough time. Think about the Gulf of Tonkin. Back in the 1960s, the Gulf of Tonkin, everyone just said, oh, of course, we were attacked by North Vietnam. Now we know the Gulf of Tonkin was really fabricated. But all it took was 50 years. So we'll see what conspiracies that people think are conspiracies today. In 50 years, maybe the truth will come out and we'll see, oh yeah, that wasn't. But it's certainly good to think maybe. Now, is everything a conspiracy? I don't believe everything is, but it's worth noting. Yep, I mean, this is also true. There's an expression also, if you want to make God laugh, you tell him your plans. But I just think the act of aiming towards something is important. Within that context, things are going to come up that you didn't plan for, but just aiming, I think, is good. Aiming's good. If a chair shocked you every time you sat in it, you would avoid it too. Yeah, of course. Of course. The old Pavlov's dogs. Of course. Operant conditioning, I think they call it. That's what I would do. I mean, curious one. Have you ever seen 6 Feet Under, the show? It's one of my favorite shows. It's from the early 2000s and HBO. It's on HBO Go now. I think it was also on Netflix for a time. But every episode, it involves a death. And there's many versions and many different kinds of deaths. But the show is about a family that runs a funeral home. And it really goes in depth on like life and death. And one of my favorite scenes, that's where I get that soulmate quote from too, by the way. The soulmate's the person that makes you the most you can be. But there's another scene where one of the guys dead. The guy who plays Dexter is in 6 Feet Under, Michael C. Hall. And his dad, Michael C. Hall, plays a gay funeral director, very different than his Dexter character. But his dad was like, because Michael C. Hall's character in the show, he gets violently assaulted, this random act of violence. And he gets PTSD from it, basically. And his dad comes to him as a ghost, and he basically chastises him a little bit because he confronted the person who committed the assault in jail. And he was like, well, didn't do anything. And the dad was like, no, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you for confronting him. And then the dad said something that would probably get pushed back today. He had said, because Michael C. Hall's character was complaining. His name's David in the show. And his dad was like, you're not even grateful, are you? And he was like, grateful for what? The worst day of my life? And he said, no, grateful for the fact that you're still alive. Because he's dead. The dad's dead, talking to him as a ghost. And he's like, grateful to be alive. You can do anything. You're living. And he said, you hold on to your pain like it means something. But he goes, I'm here to tell you, it doesn't mean shit. Sometimes you just got to let it go. And then Michael C. Hall's character says, well, I don't think it's that easy. And then his dad says, well, what if I told you it is? And, it's one of those things where the people today probably wouldn't like that, but there's a lesson to take from it. Some people hold on to it. You got it, Alex. I appreciate your support. One of my favorite shows. I've heard of it, but I was in Sweden. We did not get it there. We will all have to reckon with our own death and witness that of others. Yes, that's part of the life experience. But as William Wallace said, everybody dies, but not everybody really lives. Yeah, and that stood out to me. If you look up that clip on YouTube, you can look up David's dad, 6 Feet Under, tells him to be grateful. It's a great scene. It's great. I mean, it's a classic show. Because, sometimes with the people that really want to help you, it might seem a little bit harsh sometimes. Because I know in the space here, we're all so caught up on we must validate, we must encourage, we must support. And we do. And we do. And for my part, I try to. I definitely try to. But occasionally, I try to guide some people in the right direction. And in order to do that, sometimes validation alone sometimes isn't enough. And sometimes you got to try to hold their hand to the next level and say, okay, how about we think about it like this? Because growth is not comfortable. A lot of times growth is going to be uncomfortable, and we have to get uncomfortable in order to change. So if someone's never willing to get uncomfortable, they're just not going to change. And that's the thing that in the narcissistic abuse space, I don't think we talk about very much, but it's absolutely true. And there's reasons why they don't talk about it, because the people who dare bring it up, they risk losing followers, they risk finances, and so it's safer for them just to not talk about it. Yes, William Wallace was brutally executed. Yes, and if people are complaining about the same thing all the time, they are bitter. Yeah, some people, they're addicted to their struggle. And that's another one that's going to upset some people. But sometimes it's true. That's the kind of tough love that people in AA and NA would get more often. It doesn't happen very much anymore. People are a little softer and gentler now. And that's good in some ways, but not so good in other ways. Nothing's going to be black and white with it. Haven't you seen Braveheart? Yeah, I mean, they took some movie liberties, but still a good movie. Good soundtrack too. Yeah, sometimes you do. That's what Raquel, the capacity expert, that's what I think what she does. I mean, as a black woman, I think people are more receptive to her being tough like that, which I think, hey, I think she's a good person for that message. Unfortunately, I think some people, as a white guy, they're like, oh, who are you to be saying this? Yeah, and they get stuck. Yeah, and that's the issue with a video or a post. I'm just generally throwing something at the wall. Like I stick to what I believe, of course. I'm not going to say something I don't believe. But when I'm throwing it out there, you don't know how anyone's going to take it in. You don't know what situation they have in their minds that they're going to try to put it over. Oh, he's saying this, but this is what's going on in my situation. So he's invalidating me. It's like, well, if you were to tell me about your situation, then I'd be able to tell you, okay, this is what I think about your situation. And it might be completely irrelevant to the topic I'm talking about right now, but it just depends. Yeah, I mean, they are. They are. I mean, there's a lot of guys that prefer going to women for help too. There's a lot of guys that in the dating world, they don't like men and they want the answers from women. And the prettier the woman, the more they want the answers from her. But I would also say that's part of the problem because those guys, they would probably benefit from masculine energy. They would benefit from getting a better relationship with the masculine. That's probably what the issue is, or some of the issue, I should say. I can say the most violent things, and everyone just thinks it's cute. Yeah, I mean, women do have, they're able to do that. They're going to give you, they'll give you more of a pass than they'll give me. Like if I say something people don't like, they're quick to rip me, which is fine. The true test of confidence is really how do you handle criticism? How do you handle the people that are ripping you? How old are you? Are you 21? Depending on how old you are and depending on the relationship, it just depends. Honestly, women or dudes would probably love you because if you ever read The Art of Seduction by Robert Greene, talks about some of the best female seductresses over time. They had a little bit of masculine energy, so it makes the masculine more comfortable with them. And as a dating coach, that's exactly what would be in your favor. Oof, what? Yeah, I mean, that's the advantage that some women have. But it still depends. Still depends. But yeah, but how old are you though? Because some of this, if you're young, is kind of just normal being young. But if you're older and you know what you're doing and you know when you're sleeping around and not process the feelings, that's not the best. But a lot of it depends. It depends on how old you are, depends on what you want. Ah, frail Asian woman, huh? That's it's disarming. For men, that's disarming. And so they'll like you. And if you wanted to talk about dating stuff, I told you I was gonna get that woman named Mary, Love Peace Soul, I think is her YouTube channel. She's got a little bit of that energy. She used to be a high-end escort. Yeah, so I mean, now that you're that age, sometimes single, the process would probably be good to emotionally reset because when you do that, you can just transfer the feelings to somebody else. And it also seems like you still have feelings for your ex anyway, because you're talking about her, trying to think about how to present the image, the thought that you think her mom thinks she's a narcissist. She has to be willing to be open minded to hear it, though. If she's not, there's nothing you can do. All Asians or all people? Curious one. What was the thing that was making you nauseated? I'm curious about that. This. Oof, what? Are you talking about what the other dude said about getting into a relationship 2 months after a breakup? Maybe? Or was it something I said? Ah, it's getting tight. Oh, yeah. Well, they say with Asian women, right? They say they don't age until they're like 80 and then they look 100. That's what I've seen with them. They look young as can be until they're like 78. And then all of a sudden they look 100. It happens overnight. But women, Asian women in their 40s can easily pass for women in their 20s, in my experience. So they got that. Because they say in Japan and in other countries like that, 69. They say the diet's high in taurine that can really help people stay young. 60, that's the magic number, 60. Ah. Oh, so 60s when it happens. You look in your 20s until you're 60, and then it stops. I think me as a guy, I do all right for 40. If it wasn't for a little gray in my beard, I'd probably look younger. Postmenopause. I think for men it's that way too. I think. I'm not sure though. But like you said, curious one about the social safety nets. I mean, people don't realize that the police, firefighters, anyone that works for the government, they would all say, oh, no, that's socialism. Let's go. I was like, no, it's not socialism. We just have a mixed bag economy. Like, what are you talking about? And our economy in America tends to need a lot of socialism booster shots over the time because that's what the alphabet agencies, it's basically a middle class jobs program. I mean, it employs millions of people. Like, that's not nothing. So, how do you celebrate 6-9? Sounds naughty. Good. Good. As long as I don't lose my. I thought about color in my hair, but the Wizard brand, I think a little gray works for the Wizard brand. You don't. I mean, I didn't celebrate it either. But it's a couple days ago now. It's June 13th now. Is that how you support 422? My birthday's 3/3. Yeah. I'm not a weed person though. Weed does not splice well with my anxiety, so I don't like it. I'd much rather drink a beer than smoke a joint. But I very rarely do that. Like I said, I might start talking about more political stuff because I'm getting to the point with the narcissism topic where Sometimes I'm not as thrilled to be talking about it anymore. I get tired of talking about it over and over. And sometimes it's like I don't want to just talk about all the toxic behaviors. And some people don't like that. Don't like the fact that I'm trying to push them forward a little bit. So that's where a change and me doing something different might come into play. I want my taxes to help all. I worked at the Pentagon that drains the budget and can't pass an audit, but we're going to kick people off Medicaid who work in many cases. Yeah. Why can't the Pentagon pass a budget? Why are they losing so much money? Like, who's in charge of that? I mean, they say the hardest part about getting a government job is getting the job. But once you get the job, they're not going to fire you. It's difficult to be fired. So if you're part of the FBI, the CIA, the ATF, the State Department, uh, Pentagon, who else is out there? The DAA, the FDA. I mean, they're all government agencies. Yeah, I mean, I got nothing against the people that smoke. Yeah, I mean, people smoke. I don't care. People can do what they want. My grandmom's birthday is May the 4th, 1929. Yeah, I mean, I probably don't want to know. I mean, you're right. Like they say to the DMV and all those things, they'll say how inefficient the government can be because there's just so much red tape. And that's what the libertarians would go on and on about. Oh, look at the small government. It's like, dude, libertarians don't, they just say things. There's nothing they actually, and a lot of libertarians, they've been pro Trump recently anyway, and they claim to be pro war or anti war. And it's like, dude, they're doing plenty of war. What are you talking about? You claim to be, you claim to be freaking anti war, though. Yeah, 96. Can you believe it? Queen Elizabeth, I think, died at 96. Yeah. Ideally, but that'll never happen. The politicians and whomever else, they're never going to let go. They're never. So it's not going to happen. Well, I think about time to wrap this up here. We strayed very far away from the original topic at hand about the two narcissistic people on the spectrum of narcissism. But that does happen. That does happen. There's a small percentage of time, but it happens. And I see it. I see it. I see people that are like, huh, this is not too good. And just like the commenter here that had 21 in his username, he's an example of it. He's 28 to 33, and there's two. Like I said, I'm not saying it's the majority of the time, but it happens. Yeah, little Ray, little to Ray, you know. There's going to be more of them. I don't know about every day, but let's try at least do 4 or 5 days a week, perhaps, if not more. Gotta try to keep the discipline going. But I'll make some more videos about the two narcissistic people, or what to do about CPTSD, what to do about narcissistic fleas. And then gotta keep on paying attention, looking out for these interviews here too. Yeah, if you're still here, press the like button if you haven't. I presume most of you are subscribed to me, right? Hit that subscribe button with some notification action. Subscribe, notification bell, and share with someone that you think might benefit. Tell a friend about the show. Tell a friend that might be struggling with a narcissist. Tell a friend that might be struggling with being happy and single, or maybe someone who's undiagnosed in the spectrum. And I would also say self-aware narcissists are welcome here too. Self-aware borderlines are welcome. Addicts are welcome. Thank you, Jared, for your spontaneity and touching on many things. They tie together. We need each other. I hope we can work best to live in peace together. We are not owls. I'm a night owl, but not an owl in that way. But you're very welcome because you're right. Everything is connected. And that's always been my problem with the people who say, just mind your own business, mind your own business. Well, mind your own business has its limitations because if you're just minding your own business while watching abuse and nonsense happen in front of your eyes, well, now you're enabling. You're not just minding your business. Now you're an enabler. That's not good. Look at Carmela Soprano in The Sopranos. She might have been a little narcissistic too, but she was an enabler. She was a flying monkey. It just depends on the individual situation. Attachment styles. What would you say yours is? Because some people say narcissists don't have an attachment style. Some people say they're dismissive avoidant. Some people say they're avoidant. Just depends. Most of them would say insecure attachment, though. Sam Vaknin would say it's a fleeting attachment style. Yeah, share to social media. Let people know. Say there's a wonderful wizard. A wonderful wizard that has quotes just like the wizard from the Wizard of Oz. Because he tells the Tin Man, a heart is not judged by how much you love, but a heart is judged by how much you are loved by others. Yeah, he is a well-spoken gentleman, isn't he? Haha. I'm glad to see you guys making friends here too. I appreciate that. Mountain Mama of Texas. Yeah, I mean, and that's true too. It depends. Sometimes people can have different attachment styles with different people because the energy splice in different ways. I mean, this happens all the time, right? Women can treat two dudes completely differently based on how they feel about that dude. And the same can be true for men and women. Like, oh, a guy that he finds a woman attractive, he might treat that girl different than he does the one he doesn't. Yep. The wizard of radical self-respect and the shepherd of black sheep. So we're building a flock of black sheep and scapegoats. And I guess that's a good thing to define who the black sheep are. And I did do that before, I guess, too. But, it's people with addictions, the people with CPTSD, the people with autism, the people with ADHD, the self-aware narcissists, the self-aware borderlines. Basically anyone that wants to improve. That's the key for admission, wanting to improve. There you go. I should be telling people to do that more. Honestly, I should. Because there's no reason why not. And let me know also if you prefer the lives or do you prefer like a 10 to 20 minute me just doing a monologue, because I can do those too. These are more interesting for me, but it's harder for me to get a monologue because I don't like messing up. So that's the thing with the shorts. It's easier not to mess up a 60-second short. You can just pop it. But don't get me wrong. Some of those shorts takes a while to shoot some of those sometimes because you can mess up. Mountain Mama, Texas, Virginia Lou. All right, guys. I'm Cinderella, and it's a little after midnight. But you all have a great rest of your evening. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. But you can watch the rest of my YouTube videos. All right. You got it. I love it. There's going to be more. There's going to be more of me. Go. The carriage is turned into a pumpkin. Now we're Cinder Felly. Good night, everybody.